But today we're going to talk about integrity. And I have Ron Anderson. He's the ombudsman for the University of Florida. And as I was thinking about these different leadership traits, and integrity was one that that came up because I think we get a lot of ethics training. And if I were to say ethics and, or honesty and those types of things, what I wanted to get at as a leadership trait was much deeper than that. And this term integrity was what I found in these leadership books, and I thought of Ron Anderson. He is, as an ombudsman, he deals with a lot of different issues that come up with students in the university, and he is that neutral party that can kind of help resolve those issues. So I figured he would have a perspective that would be very unique as it comes in terms of integrity from, whether it's student, faculty, staff, all levels, and surely he will understand exactly the importance of this leadership trait. So I do want to, I'm excited that he is here. I do want to thank you very much for doing this, and please give him your attention.
Thank you. And when I present, I'm typically kind of a walking, mobile type of unit, but today I'm not going to be able to get into my comfort zone, so I have to be back behind the podium here. But I'm going to start by saying, has anyone even heard of an ombudsman? Do you know what that term means? Okay, does that jive with kind of? No, not really. Okay, so here's a cheap plug for my office. The ombudsman for a university or for any corporation is a neutral third party that helps resolve and mediate issues that the constituent would have with the agency. So the constituent in this case is you as a student, the agency, the University of Florida. And so one of the hallmarks about my office is that it works in a confidential manner such that you can come and speak with me, and I'm not obligated to have to divulge what we speak about unless it breaches one of two things. Either A, it involves sexual harassment, or if I feel as though what you're telling me is a threat to yourself or to another University of Florida employee or student. So beyond that, the sky's the limit for you guys. So anyway, I'm located in Tigard Hall. Anyway, that's not what we are here to talk about today. So when Katie, okay, going back behind the podium. So when Katie approached me to speak on this topic, I eagerly said, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to do that. That sounds really cool. That's interesting. And then I actually started working on it. I'm like, this is really hard. This is really difficult. What have I gotten myself into? So I think I probably learned as much as you're about to maybe learn. Maybe you know more than I do for the fact of the matter about this subject. But before we actually formally begin, and I want to also say that I was envisioning a smaller room, but I'm still going to force this on you guys for you to have to interact, all right? And if you don't interact, I'm just going to point you out, and then you're going to have to. So it's coming one way or the other. So who can tell me, give me a shout out of what integrity is to you? What is that? How would you define that?
Doing things the way that they're meant to be done and doing them with the expectations of all the parties that are involved.
So mutual respect to everybody. It's not self-serving just to you as the individual, and you're in essence doing the right thing. Someone else. Yes, ma'am.
Doing the right thing when no one is looking.
I like that. I like that. So it's the accountability of doing that, even though you may not be given acknowledgement for it, or anyone else would ever be aware that you did it. One more. Someone in the back here.
Self-respect.
Self-respect. Could you elaborate?
Respect of others.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Respect of honors?
Of others.
Oh, of others. Yes. Respect of others. So again, not just dealing with yourself. So in my research, you will find this PowerPoint to be not your typical grandma's PowerPoint, I don't think, because it's not really giving you bulleted lines. Some of the stuff is just to make you laugh at times. So that didn't work.
Click on share my screen.
Share my what?
Screen. In the front.
Where am I? Share. Oh, the thing in the middle.
No, that's not it. I don't know what happened. your PowerPoint. Oh, gosh.
So I get to go out from the podium. All a big ploy of mine.
Oh. Share my screen. Show my document. Is your document up?
It was there. There it is.
Okay.
Then he said, press that button up there. Then all I did was I hit the space bar. And
Oh, it's the space bar issue. I think you have to use those arrow keys.
Got it.
All right.
Okay. And to your point, ma'am, integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. And I think that's probably the most succinct way of kind of summing up, what the word means. Does anyone know where the word integrity is derived from? Any guesses? It's not like a test you got here. That is correct, but from a slightly shorter word. It's derived from the word integer. Okay? So, not being a math-inclined individual here, I had to look up, what is an integer? I knew it was some type of number. Well, an integer for smart people is what? A whole number, like 0, 1, 2, -1, something that is not fractionalized. So how does that relate to integrity? It describes the wholeness. And that is where it comes from. It's the wholeness as in a whole number. Also, if you were to look at the word integrity in the terms of its usage with the integrity of the hull of a ship, it's the integrity of the ship. It's the wholeness of the ship. And how it relates to what is being thrown at you as a human being and or a ship or a building or anything else. And it speaks to the character of the person. The young lady in the back, you were saying how you treat others. And a lot of this is sticking to the values that you have, despite what others may be thinking of you. And we'll, gosh.
Yeah, the space bar. Just go to the drop little arrow, the triangle. Sorry, share my screen triangle. Oh, where it says share my screen in the middle.
Uh-huh.
Right there. And then document. Share document. And then click on that. And then no space bar, just arrows. Yeah, you can click.
Okay, I will duct tape over the space bar. I found this as another description. This is from a writer in the Huffington Post. Integrity is doing the right thing, no matter what, no matter why, no matter how much damage, or it may set you back. And I like how it says you can fool yourself, or you can fool many people with hypocrisy, but you can't fool yourself. And I think that's very telling of just what that means. Integrity is a value, just the same as courage, persistence, intelligence, any of those other types of values that one has. Many times people look at it from the standpoint of, well, integrity is being honest. And in a way, that's correct. But honesty is a part of integrity. So you got to think of it that way. It is a part of integrity, whereas integrity is not just a part of being honest. You can be honest and not have integrity because of the fact that you can tell someone the truth or give an opinion on something, but not follow through on that. So they are somewhat mutually exclusive. So Calvin and Hobbes, can you read any of this? No? Okay. I'll read a little bit to you then. Okay. So it says, today at school I tried to decide whether or not to cheat on my test. I wondered if it would be better to do the right thing and fail, or is it better to do the wrong thing and succeed? On the one hand, undeserved success gives no satisfaction, but on the other hand, well-deserved failure gives no satisfaction either. Of course, most everybody cheats sometime or another. People always bend the rules if they think they can get away with it. And then again, that doesn't justify my cheating. So we have this moral dilemma here between these two cartoon characters. Then I thought, look, cheating on one little test isn't such a big deal. It doesn't hurt anyone. But then I wondered if I was just rationalizing my unwillingness to accept the consequence of not studying. Still, in the real world, people care about success, not principles. Then again, maybe that's why this world is such a mess. What a dilemma. So what did you decide? Nothing. I ran out of time, and I had to turn in the blank paper. Anymore, simply acknowledging the issue is a moral victory. Well, it just seemed wrong to cheat on an ethics test. So I found that somewhat interesting, just to kind of put in there, the concept of where you are in your life and where you're thinking. But I would define honesty as is about telling, obviously, it's about telling the truth, but rather integrity is actually putting those truths and actions and keeping your promises in what you say that you're doing. Everyone probably knows this guy, right? He kind of was a big popular person here at the University of Florida a little while back, and less popular as an NFL player, somewhat popular as a commentator, now obviously trying to get back in the combine, But anyway, regardless, everyone, this man is a polarizing individual. People, when I say polarizing, people don't dislike him necessarily. I'm sure there's a segment that do, but either people really love him or they respect him. And when I say respect him, that means that they're not agreeing with what his views are, but they're still respecting him. And if you go back to what I said earlier about sticking to your values, Tim Tebow could be playing in the NFL probably this year if he was decided to be a linebacker, if he wanted to do that. But he's choosing not to do that because he wants to be a quarterback. Whether or not he's ever going to be successful in being a quarterback, no more than I know whether or not that's a possibility. Chances are he's not. He's getting a little bit older. People aren't picking him up. So he may never fulfill that dream, but he still is displaying integrity because he is sticking with what he says he believes in and is not compromising those values despite, overwhelming odds that we have. This next slide is just, bless you. This next slide is just to give you somewhat of a polarizing dichotomy. We all know this guy too. Do we? Okay. Aaron Hernandez. For people who said, no, I don't know him. Okay, so he's kind of in a little bit of trouble right now. But he also played for the University of Florida and was a teammate of Tim Tebow's. So it's interesting that though they had a fairly close relationship at the University of Florida, where did that go from after that? Okay, the big question is, who cares? This all sounds nice, but why have integrity? That wasn't rhetorical. Why have integrity? You're my answer man.
It gives you peace of mind. You don't have to worry about being found out or having to pay for consequences of certain actions. So you can sleep better. You can live more fulfilled and feel that you can be trusted by others. So there's a lot of payoffs to having integrity rather than the opposite.
Very well spoken. Very well said. Yes.
I think it makes you a better employee. So people would want to hire you if they know you and they know your integrity. They know that you're going to be someone that's going to work well with others and aren't going to try to maybe put other people down to make yourself look better or kind of some of the self-respect things we talked about. And I think that really stands out in job interviews or just kind of in that networking when people know who you are and what you're about. They want to work with you even if you don't maybe have all the skill set. They would rather work with someone they know is going to be peaceful and
Right.
they can trust.
They're a very simple way, I think I would describe that as you're solid. You're a solid individual. You're not wavering. You're not compromising with that. Yes, sir.
And because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, because it's the right thing to do. Your moral compass is saying that this is what is appropriate. This is what should be done. But I think these things that we've now spoken about, there are many virtues of why you want to have integrity, and why you should cherish being able to do that for all of those reasons. I don't know if you wrote my presentation. Life is simpler. That's what I wrote down. That's one of the things. Life is simpler. You don't have to worry about what you've done or covering up what you may have said or have done to someone. You have nothing to hide. To your point, you gain the trust of others, of leaders. You create greater opportunities for you. There are many instances I've seen, and I've worked here at UF for a little over 20 years, so I've kind of seen things come and go. And I've seen individuals who, as an employee, who have worked here at a very low level and have rose through the ranks because of the fact that they had that willingness, that integrity, that ability to do work that is unacknowledged, right? As opposed to individuals who may come in, fresh out the box, maybe with the appropriate skill set from an academic standpoint, but none of the real life skills, none of the true grit, so to speak, that puts you over the edge with that. And with that, you get increased responsibility. So, to some extent, I'm not going to say there's downsides of having integrity, but, once you start to display these things to individuals, they start looking to you. You become that leader. You become that individual, that go-to, that, hopefully it's what you're aspiring to want to do. What does this say? Well, what do you mean it's all wrong? I copied everything straight off the internet, so. Of course it can't be wrong, is it? No one lies on the internet. Okay, so I want to talk about how do you increase integrity? How do you foster integrity? What are the things that you could be doing as a human being to nurture that? Yes, sir.
Just like keeping small commitments with people.
Small commitments, no matter how small they are, fulfilling them.
Yeah, just like if you say you'll meet somebody for lunch, going and meeting them for lunch instead of blowing them off because a better offer came up.
Absolutely. Doing the right thing. Yes, sir.
Honoring your word, so if you know that something isn't going to happen that you said would, that you acknowledge that it's not going to happen, see what way you can clean it up with somebody or find an alternative means.
Taking that responsibility. What about, something that I've seen in my life of having to, if you see something that is not right, exactly, speaking up, having to make those hard choices of where you are in life, and it's easy to turn and look the other way at times. And there's a slide at the end here that'll kind of sum up what I'm saying here, is that one's integrity is either increased or decreased incrementally based upon small decisions in your life. And if you continually decide to make bad decisions, that will erode your integrity. You may not realize it because it's just kind of like, well, yeah, that's how I am. Yeah, no big deal. But over a course of time, if you could kind of look back historically to where you were and where you are now, you'd be like, whoa, how did all that happen? And that's, now I'm speaking from a middle-aged person's perspective, of where I was, potentially 20 some odd years ago to what I do today. And I'm not saying I'm any better today, but I've always tried to, sustain, what I am and what I do. Someone else, how do you think you can foster this? Oh, I'm sorry, Katie. Yes, sir.
For me, I try to always make sure that everything I say about other people is positive, and that I don't say anything bad about anyone, even if they've done something mean to me or bad to me, that I always just reflect positive things about people. I think that says a lot.
It's very good. And by the way, she is one of the most positive people I know. Really, and I say that sincerely. I say that very sincerely.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I kind of think you just kind of said it, like you say things sincerely. You don't ever say things that you don't mean. You don't do things that you don't mean. Everything's done with your own moral sincerity.
Yeah, it's it takes a lot at times to back up an unpopular position. if you hold one, and to stick to that, assuming it's a morally right, thing to do when the status quo is not going along with that. So yes, absolutely. Someone in the back of the room.
Stop lying to yourself.
I'm sorry?
Stop lying to yourself.
Talk.
Stop lying.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's a good step in the right direction. I thought you said talk lightly to yourself. I'm like, okay, that's a good one too. Yeah, okay, you heard it from the gentleman in the back. Stop lying to yourself. Yes, sir.
Being persistent when you're unpopular. Like when your view is unpopular, still being persistent on that.
Sticking to your value, sticking to what you set out to do in the first place, and not giving in. Very good. So I had a couple here. You need to establish a set of core values. These are the deal breakers in your life. These are the things that you will not compromise no matter what happens when the chips are down. I'm not saying a list of like 25 things, but some core values, maybe 5 to 7, things that that I can't go past this. And you need to have that when you start making decisions and when you go about making your decisions. Does this violate any of the core values that I have set out to abide by? Integrity is a conscious effort. You don't unconsciously have integrity. You must be conscious of what you're doing because these are decisions that you're making. You're making choices in how things are going. Look at the choices that you make. And I think probably the best analogy is, what you just did, do you want that on the front of the Alligator or the Gainesville Sun? Right? Trust me, in what I do for a living, I think about that all the time. Because as a public, employee, I'm subject to public records requests. And so if I send an email, if I say something, that's fair game for the Gainesville Sun or whomever else, for you, if you want to go ahead and get that public record, you certainly can. So whenever I say anything, I'm going to say it factually and with as little opinion as possible about what I'm doing. Here's one I think that at least I didn't think of until I started doing some more research about this. Learn to be assertive. How does that play into it, do you think? Why should you be assertive?
I think we see a lot of people that make choices because other people push them into certain situations and they don't assert their moral values and what they stand for. They're like, oh, well, I'll do it. I guess if you say it's all right, then they might not do their due diligence or feel pressure to do something that they normally on their own wouldn't do.
So maybe almost like a group mentality and saying, well, if these other people are doing it, can't be that bad. I'm going to do that.
Even if we know fundamentally that it's wrong, we have to assert that no, we're not going to go along with it because we know it violates our moral.
As being assertive, I think assertive gets a bad rap. Okay? Assertive doesn't mean demanding. Assertive doesn't mean that you are going into it aggressively. Assertive is more synonymous with confidence, that you're confident in what you're saying. I mean, some of the softest spoken people that I've encountered in my life are some of the most confident people that I've ever witnessed. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of hearing our new president speak. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and Katie was in the meeting a couple of weeks ago, and he presented. Well, it was kind of like a lunch meeting, but he was basically presenting to us. And there was an air of humility. He was soft-spoken, but not as though you didn't understand what he was saying. But most of all, what I got from it was confidence, that he was confident in what he was saying. He was confident in the views that he had. He wasn't dodging or bypassing, answering anything. And that to me really, and you saw it, I mean, that really stood out. So was he, would I describe that as assertive? I think so. He was confident in how it's working with that. And why is that important? The last thing, why is it being assertive important? Other than for what you just stated, you don't come across as whining and you don't come across as being arrogant. Your view is taken, even though your view may not be agreed upon. It's acknowledged and respected. This is the slide I was talking about. You don't wake up one morning a bad person. It happens by 1,000 tiny surrenders of self-respect to self-interest. So it chips away at you over time. So other things that you can be doing to increase your integrity, and the gentleman in the back said it in a very global way, but I'll say it in a sense of avoid white lies. You know, the things, those indiscretions that people will have, oh, it's okay, you know, it's just, they won't know, it's for the better. You know, you rationalize, you say things saying because it's okay to do that. That just leads and adds into what this individual is saying. That starts knocking you down with that. Associate yourself with the proper influences. A friend of mine years ago, his dad, he was one of the senior vice presidents for IBM, told his son Chris, who is still a friend of mine to this day, he said, CJ, it's hard to fly like an eagle when you surround yourself with buzzards. And as folksy as that might come across, he is true. You know, who you're surrounding yourself with is either going to make your choice in moving to be a more, to have greater integrity easier or harder. So sometimes, you know, you can't always change your surroundings, but the more that you can work towards that, the easier it's going to be for you in order to uphold those values. All right, lunchtime, all right. We got a little bit of time here. So, on my quest to make this more interactive, I came up with some case studies. Actually, I didn't come up with any case studies. This is from, I think, Northwestern University in their research arm. And these are really cool scenarios that we're going to go through. And so what we want to do is we're going to look through these. You're going to read them. But seeing that you couldn't read my other things, it looks like I'll be reading to you. And then there are questions that we're going to answer. So we're going to do this as a group. So let's see if I can do this right, which is highly unlikely. Oh my goodness, it worked. Can you read that at all? No. It's a binary answer. Yes, no. Great. How do we do the zoom in?
You hit control and
Control plus. Now, I'm not touching that space bar. Wow. Learn something new every day. Yeah, I'm all over that. How's that? Kind of better? Okay. I can go a little bit. Tell me when you need to go down. Are we all good? Have we all read it? All right, so in summary, what we have here is we have an undergraduate research student who has stumbled across something that appears to be an issue of academic integrity, and they're in a quandary of what is the appropriate action, right? So what would you say is the action or the inaction that is the cause for the concern? Yes, sir.
It's something looks like it was fabricated in the journal, and it concerns her today whether to tell or advise.
Mm-hmm. survey says, exactly. So the obvious, who or what may be affected? This may be a little bit. The journal, okay.
The authors of the journal.
The authors of the journal, exactly, because, you know, one for all and all for one in these publications.
Also her reputation.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Also her reputation as well. I mean, if she were to speak up, it could become an issue.
So, and when we say reputation, we're saying a diminished,
Academic reputation.
yeah. It could harm that, you're saying?
Yes.
Could it possibly increase it?
It could if it went about a certain way.
So here we're playing into the whole issue of sticking with what your core values are, even though this isn't a convenient one. This one is like, I'm gonna walk away from this kind of situation. Yes, ma'am.
I'm thinking that it kind of really hurt her a whole lot. She's an undergrad, so if she was like submit something to this paper, if her mentor agrees to that, say like this seems weird, I don't support this. Either the journal will go ahead and say like you're right, and she will gain a lot of respect for that, or it will be like, oh, it's just this undergrad thing, okay. So I don't think you get that acknowledged if you're an undergrad and you're wrong.
But if this was changed to a graduate student, given those same dynamics,
I don't know. Maybe if you're more senior graduate students and you're a bit known already in the field. But the big thing on who's affected, I didn't understand the case law, but I'm thinking it's like medicine somehow. So if other research is based on this self findings, it will actually affect the future of the research in that field.
So broader implications than just the individual that's involved. Yeah.
I think it's maybe even a little more difficult for an undergrad to come forward, only because usually it's a summer internship, right? So, I mean, it'd be very easy for that undergrad to say, well, I'm just only here for a month anyways, like, well, I'm just, you know.
Yeah. It's not my job. It's not my
Right.
role.
Once you open that can of worms, then there could be that follow-up and all of that, and it could turn into a big mess. And so I would see that as being a little harder, or a little harder decision for an undergrad to how involved do I really want to get in this, and how not being so invested in the research as much as what a graduate student would be. I think it makes.
And then where does that leave you with your integrity? You're not sticking to your core values.
Well, she would need to say something if she thinks there's something wrong, but it doesn't clearly say those fabricated or manipulated, just as she thinks it might be. So she could be wrong,
She could be.
and then she could bring it up and say, hey, listen, I think this could be fabricated, could you take a second look and get other people to give their opinion, because it might just appear to her to be fabricated in a certain way. And that will
That's a good point.
saves her values, because she's sticking up for what she believes, but she's not 100% sure of this possibility, so it's good to kind of.
She's keeping the door open, so to speak, with that. So let's see what they say. All right, so they speak to all the authors, other members of the research labs in which the research was done will also be affected. And finally, anyone in the field is depending upon the authenticity of the work to base their own scientific inquiries, which is what you were saying. It could have a cascading effect on this. So how will they be affected? Well, it tarnishes, as you were saying, the individual's reputation, the guilt by association. You know, if you were known to have been collaborating with these individuals, you know, oh yeah, that was Ron. He was with that group. Yeah, those were the people who did this. Things aren't working well. And as it says, as unfair as it may seem, the integrity of the work of other members of the laboratories involved, the fraudulent research may also be questioned. So do you think there's any laws or regulations, written or unwritten, that should apply to this?
Pertaining to her duty to report, or what do you?
They're asking, you know, can you name any things that are either a regulation or a law or something that is kind of firm that would address this? Other than it just sounds like a good idea. Yes, sir.
Fraud.
Fraud, exactly, academic fraud.
I mean, just fraud in general. If this was, medical research that led to some sort of pharmaceutical that is now harming
Mhm.
people, and you knowingly did it, that's not just academic fraud, that's illegal.
That's right. Makes the lawyers happy. So they say loss of professional credibility, loss of research funding, employment, fines, imprisonment. So yeah, we're going down the right road. So can anything be done to prevent this from reoccurring? Found that to be an interesting question. Or to help fix what has already now been broken, or potentially broken. Yeah.
Well, if the journal, if it's the idea that the journal is peer reviewed from just other people, maybe they can add some sort of technical reviewer on it. If it's something to do with copy and pasting of images or image modification, you can have someone whose expertise is just in that, so it's outside of the scope of their research, and they're only looking at it from one perspective.
Right. So they don't necessarily have a vested interest in their research, but rather they have a technical skill to evaluate it. So all of these studies that then, so you don't have to chew off your other arm, I'm going to only have two others, are from real situations that occurred at institutions. And so, because it's, obviously that's not an unheard of thing. All right, so here's going to be the challenge. Oh, still working. Don't hit spacebar. Okay, good. I intuitively use the minus then. So immediately we can say probably that old Tom here is having some challenges with integrity. Everyone's read this? Yeah. Some of these questions are funny, like, what's the cause? Well, I think this is pretty obvious what we have here. So who or what may be affected is a better question. So he would be considered to be gaining an unfair academic advantage. What else?
Also, he seems to have a time management issue. Maybe. So, I mean, by just continually covering up, it's not addressing the main underlying issue. I mean, yeah, we all have a time where we get behind and stuff, but this is a persistent problem. And then also, from the professor's standpoint, like you said, him showing favoritism to get him in trouble as well.
That's very good, the time management piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I think of, Tom is really going to be probably affected the most by this, whether he thinks it or not, because in his mind he's getting away with something, but it's back to those little decisions that break down your integrity over the course of time, and it's only a matter of time before they find themselves in your office over something larger, Yeah. Because although, I mean, this stuff, that probably happens all the time, with students, and so I think that, over time, yeah, lessons are not learned in their character, but even just it leading to, hey, I got away with that, it's a lot easier to then do it again.
Exactly. It makes it easier. The door is opened. It justifies why it was okay. So what do they have to say? Well, his grade, GPA, and taking on a long-term view, likelihood of acceptance in medical school could potentially be affected. I didn't know he was going to medical school. Anyway.
So he's only an undergrad taking, doing 2 jobs. I mean, technically his situation isn't nearly as much as what he's going to face in the future. So it's like if he doesn't get a handle on it then.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I was talking to schools are all grad students, like.
We have bigger challenges.
There's bigger challenges and just in life does not work that way. Even if you just have a regular job, you have deadlines you have to meet. You actually own up to it and work out what you need to do to get it done. You can't continue to lie all the time. So this definitely can get to a bigger issue down the line.
Mm-hmm. So as it says here, if Tom speaks with Dr. B and asks for help, he could receive that extension, which would give him time to turn in a good paper. Dr. B might also be able to help Tom figure out how to better manage his time, so Tom will not fall behind. But if he lies, which is what he did the first time, he could get more sympathy and another bailout, but he could also get caught. In this case, he could get in serious trouble, fail the course, even being thrown out of college. So, this is pretty obvious, what should be happening here with that. But these implications, though this is a very rudimentary type of example, it speaks to all of these other greater underlying issues that all affect your ability to have that integrity. All right, I'll try this once again. Why are we not working? No worries, I brought copies. Okay, so this one is entitled Sometimes Silence is Golden. So, didn't we just speak about Tom? Wasn't that other guy Tom? Okay, we got Tom again. Tom's into a lot of issues. Tom was working with supervision provided by a graduate student, Mr. Lee, on a proprietary summer research project in Professor Zhou's lab, which enjoyed private financial support. The project, which was nearing completion, was an exciting one on a currently hot topic in nanoscience, and the results were so exciting that the university and the company had jointly filed for an international patent. As the project involved significant intellectual property, everyone working on the project, including Tom, had been required to sign a confidentiality agreement at the onset. One day, Tom heard Mr. Lee discussing the research project with a friend who was a graduate student from another research group in the department of the university. So old Mr. Lee here is breaking some confidence in what he signed up for, and he's speaking to others about this. So, same questions. What is the action or inaction that's the cause for the concern? Which is what I just got done saying. He breached confidentiality. Who or what may be affected? Yeah.
Research group, university, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, at a whole, I mean, it's team-based, so the whole team is going to be affected by this. It's going to have that negative impression of what had happened. But to the extent of how will they be affected, though? Yes?
It might, to an extreme sense of an example, it could find its way down to a competitor or to someone in a legal office or something like that. It could just play a very long game of telephone.
Mm-hmm. When you start opening those doors like that, those things happen. Anyone else? Someone in the middle. Haven't heard from the middle in a while. That's somewhere between the front and back. I wouldn't have integrity if I didn't. Now people are all worried. People looking down on their notes. All right, I'll pick myself. See, I was able to still have integrity. So this article says the seriousness of the situation will depend on, one, what Mr. Lee discussed with his friend. So you got to know what it was and to what level of detail. How many times has he discussed the project with his friend? Was this a one-time deal, or were there other occasions? and whether or not Mr. Lee has discussed the project with any other people, and how much information he shared. So it's really, it's hard to answer that given the very limited information that was presented in the case itself. But the rule of thumb here obviously is that's just not a good idea when you've done that. So,
Also depends a lot on the friend.
on the what, sir?
The friend.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a nice guy, still not the right thing to do, but maybe he just shuts up and nobody will ever know. Except,
That is, yeah, I mean, that in terms of damage control, that would be the best case scenario. But as y'all have just stated, it is still wrong.
it is on his contract that he signed, which is legally binding, so he's.
So all of those things play into it. It's a pretty interesting thing when you start really thinking of it beyond just the scope of integrity being the right thing to do with that. So questions or any further discussion? That's all that I have actually ready to present or any studies. Yes?
I was just gonna, kind of piggybacking off that same scenario. No matter how small or large they lost the patent because of that, there is no one that would want to work with Mr. Lee again. And therefore, future research funds or future collaboration opportunities would just be null and void. Like it would really, I mean, tenure or not tenure, no one would collaborate with him. And, I don't remember how long ago it was, but there was a faculty member that, there was misused funds that came out, and I mean, talk about all over the paper, and really made the institution look bad and the department look bad. I think, I don't even know what happened to that department. I think something was dispersed about that department altogether. So it can have huge damaging effects on these decisions we think aren't a big deal.
Yeah, it has much further implications than what is right at hand.
As you get into that PhD realm, where now you're talking about 1% or less than 1% of the population, your circles of colleagues at that level is much smaller, and it may seem like it depends on what his friend does with it. Well, I don't know. I think that friend, if I were that friend, I wouldn't want to, I would know and understand if they just breached that confidentiality. I don't know if I would want to trust them with something, other collaboration in the future.
You don't want to go there with that.
Yeah.
You had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question. What, in your opinion, is the difference between someone who's just, very assertive of their values, their core values, and what they really strongly believe in? When does that become stubbornness? What indicates the difference between stubbornness and having integrity?
I would say, and it is just shooting from the hip, I would say the difference is whether or not you're imposing that on your feelings and your values. If those things are being imposed upon others, and are those affecting those people in a negative way, as long as what you're doing and sticking with is, it may not be, the other people may not agree with it, but as long as it's not harming them, I would say is where the difference is. Totally my opinion. So there was this thing that popped up that says Ken has raised his hand. Is that someone who's chatting in or something?
I don't know.
If you get the check.
Should I hit the space bar?
Yes.
Yes.
If you hit the space bar, the chat box on the bottom.
Seriously, hit the space bar?
Seriously.
Oh, Ken is typing. Okay. Okay. Ken, you're a man of few words. All right. Integrity repair. I'm just joking with you. It's kind of related to, I would say, rebuilding trust. Trust is something that takes time. I mean, time, when I say time, it could take years to build trust in a relationship, whether it's a friend or if it's a relationship, a romantic relationship, whatever it might be. Trust takes a long time, and it takes a second to break it. And once that trust is broken, much like, kind of like integrity, it takes a lot to go back there. So what are the steps in doing that? Well, basically, whatever the hypothetical situation is that broke your integrity, you probably want to first start by having that conversation with that entity or whoever it is that was a part of this, however you let that person down or that agency down with that. You know, words are great, but they're only words. Your actual, you know, walking the talk is what starts to fix this. And there's no easy way to do that. You just have to start doing the right things and continue to do them, and it's a long process. So it's basically, I guess what I'm saying to you is take all of these things that we talked about today and apply those as soon as you can into your life. And that will, I mean, over time, will start to improve that. Anyone else? Okay. Well, you know, again, this was a real pleasure for me because I gained a lot from this myself to be able to research this and put this together. And I hope that this will make you guys at least think a little bit in the future when you're, you know, in your labs, when you're doing your research, or just outside of the university. That's why I didn't really want to do this as a strictly a graduate student type of thing, but more holistically as you as an individual. So I thank you for listening and have a great afternoon.